Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show, where we're talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you could be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today, I am so excited to welcome my old friend, Ashlee. Ashlee is the founder and CEO of A Squared Online, a consulting firm that allows entrepreneurs to step off the hamster wheel and take focused, consistent action in their businesses. And if that's not enough, Ashlee is also the creator of the Action Amplified Method, is a published author, and has been featured on numerous podcasts, radio shows, and blogs. Welcome to the show, Ashlee. Thanks so much for taking your time to share your story today.
I'm so glad we're getting to talk today, Stephanie. Thanks.
I know. Listen, so much has happened in the last couple of years for you. Mm-hmm. And I was hoping you could kind of back up to even before then and just give me your story. Tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you ended up here.
Yeah. So I did not have a straight line of a story at all. Did not, I think a lot of entrepreneurs felt that bug early on, and I was not that way. I studied English in college, worked with an international anti-trafficking organization for a while, and then a staffing firm, and then a consulting firm. And each of those roles kind of brought more clarity to me of where my strengths were, which were in this organizational, operational, project management space. And so I started focusing more on that, went back to school for my MBA, and then reached a point of really wanting freedom, wanting autonomy in my life, wanting flexibility around raising a family, and really frustrated with this binary choice I was being handed, which was work full-time or be home full-time with your kids. And it's like, it's 2017. There should be more options than this. So I'm going to go make one. And so that's when I started my business and really started out in operations support for small business owners, and kind of stumbled into that space and fell in love with that group of people, with solopreneurs and entrepreneurs who were in the same boat I was, really wanting that freedom. And over the years have focused more and more on systems building and on time leadership and on supporting entrepreneurs to actually experience that freedom. So it's been quite the iterative road, which I am learning to accept as part of the process.
Yeah. And, having been one of those clients of yours, that's how we met. I actually hired you. And, I can vouch for how important it is to get that kind of help, but also how difficult it is to get the kind of help that you actually need, right? And that's kind of one of the stumbling blocks that a lot of business owners come upon is, who do I hire and how do I trust that I'm going to get the kind of support that I need? So somewhere in the mix there, you went and had a baby, right? Mm-hmm. And you were able to sort of craft this life that you've been kind of seeking, but you also wrote a book. There's been a lot going on. So tell me about the book journey. So it wasn't enough to get the MBA to have the kid, then to start the business. Then we wrote a book. So keep going. Tell me more.
Yeah. So I started the process last summer and knew about this program for a long time, but the timing was never quite right. And realized I was in a position of wanting to articulate more clearly what it was that I was trying to do and what I was standing for, and what I believed about the space that I was in, the space of helping entrepreneurs make things happen and implement on their ideas and those sorts of things. And so I felt like writing a book would be a great way to go about that. And the program I was in, thankfully, was very structured. So I didn't have to figure out how to do that. They'd just tell me, all right, this week, do this. This week, do this, which made it feel possible in the midst of all the other things. But it was one of the most powerful learning experiences. I didn't expect that as much in terms of not just learning how to articulate my ideas, but really deepen my own understanding and my own ideas and expand those and strengthen them. And so I think it'll be a while before I go do that again. But I definitely saw the value of kind of a project of creating long form content as a way to learn, not just as a way to express my ideas, which I hadn't expected.
Oh, I love that. And so there's a little bit of learning and there's a little bit of synthesis too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talking to people, bringing those stories together. Yeah. A lot of that.
So what are you, so the current iteration of the business now, I mean, it seems to me like you're growing into kind of consulting agency model. Tell me where you're at now. What are you offering to your clients? Who are you working with? Tell me more.
Yeah, yeah. So we have kind of two main arms for the business, both of them focused around system strategy and VA recruiting. Since I started out essentially as a VA myself and now have hired VAs for myself, hired VAs for clients, seen what's worked, what's not worked. We really wanted to help with systems and team building as the two major pillars of building a freedom-based business. And so we have a group program mainly for solo entrepreneurs who are really wanting to become a CEO, to make that transition where their business can grow beyond them. They can actually start unplugging, taking vacations, experiencing that lifestyle that they wanted when they started. And then for more agencies, we do kind of that in-depth system strategy, workflow redesign work that they need to help their teams work together well. So those are kind of the two different ways that we support people. But we always wanted to create a container for solo entrepreneurs because I just love that group of people so much. And a lot of system strategists end up moving towards the agencies and the seven-figure businesses and those sorts of things, which we're absolutely able to do. We just love being able to support these people and wanted to create space for that too.
Okay. And so when you're engaging with your clients, what are they typically starting with?
Yeah. So a lot of times they're at a spot of, okay, things are working. Like I'm getting clients. I'm having a hard time saying no to more of them. I'm overwhelmed. It's been 2 years since I actually took any kind of real vacation. I want to keep building this business, but I have no time to do that with. And also I'm exhausted. I'm burning out. And, people tell me to hire a VA. So I went and found one and it didn't work. And so now I don't know what to do. And so we're kind of starting from that spot of getting them onto solid ground first, starting to take back at least some semblance of, okay, I've got this, I can breathe again. And then we can start building some of those more long-term systems to help them stay there, to stay on solid ground. But yeah, a lot of times it's that spot of, I want to keep growing, but I don't have any more hours to throw at this problem. So where do I go from here?
And so tell me what synthesized for you from your book. So before you started writing the book, you had the business and you were kind of doing the work. What changed the business when you wrote the book?
That's a really good question. So I think for me, I always recognized that systems mattered. I did process design work very early on. And so that wasn't necessarily a new discovery for me when I was talking to people. But one of the things that I learned over the course of that experience was that, it's a core, beautiful part of not just building a business that we love, but also having the life that we want, realizing that freedom was very possible as an entrepreneurship. It's one of the most powerful tools to experience freedom in your time and your life and your choices, but it's not inevitable at all. And so how do we fight for that? And so I think the biggest thing for me was really understanding what that meant and how that worked and how do we fight for that, and those sorts of things, rather than just like, oh yeah, processes are an important part of being a business owner. They help make things more efficient. So it gave me this bigger vision of how that fits into life in general and how things happen on a broad scale of how our lives work, and not just, oh yeah, having a good software tool or an SOP makes my life a little easier in this one area. So that was a surprise to me, I think.
Yeah. So you and I come from a similar background. And so
Mm-hmm.
I love what you're putting down, but the fact that a process is not just about, documenting something in the way that we do things, there's so much inherent in the process that affects how our business affects our lives and how our business reflects our lives and how our business enables our lives to be a certain way, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of realizing, the systems in our lives are the things that decide what actually happens, not so much what we say should happen or what we want to happen. It's what the system enables is what happens.
Well, I'm interested also in how that evolution affected what you want in your business.
That's a good question. I think, at least for me, if I'm honest, I did not start my business with some deeper vision of human flourishing, more broadly. It was really, I want to be able to make money part-time. I want to be able to flex this around the needs of our family. And that's still a huge priority for me in how my business runs. But it really changed the way I wanted my business to be in the world, to this much bigger picture of, okay, how do we support human flourishing through this? How do we become part of the conversation of what that means and how work fits into that and how systems fit into that? These bigger, deeper questions that I didn't even know I needed to ask, and taking seriously too, that if I'm working with people in this space, that's the kind of impact we're talking about, right? So we need to take our work really seriously as well. Are we actually helping people experience that? Not just, oh, they're paying us to do this and we did this thing and now we're moving on, right? So it didn't so much change, the lifestyle I wanted my business to give me, because that was always a priority, but it definitely changed the impact idea of realizing that, wow, this is a lot bigger of a deal than I thought, I guess.
And did that change the types of clients that you were looking for?
I don't think so. It did kind of validate in some ways why I loved this group of people so much. Working with you and with Sharon, some of these early clients that I had, it really wasn't this intentional thing. Like, I'm going to go out and work with, these kinds of small businesses. It was, I'm doing this kind of work. I need some clients. I'm starting this brand new thing. Here are some people who need what I can do. Let me work with them, and it was kind of an accident in some ways, because I didn't realize that, the startup community and the small business community that's kind of in person or that's operated for a really long time, and then this new kind of lifestyle driven, freelance driven entrepreneurial community are quite different in what they're looking for and what they need in their culture. And just really falling in love with this group of people was kind of an accident, I guess, but it really helped me articulate maybe a little more why, that I saw this as a really cool, maybe even cultural movement of opening up doors for people to do business differently, to live their life differently, to make money differently. And in that, to have a really fulfilling work experience that's different than what we're traditionally offered. So,
well, I love this. And a long time ago, I actually had a blog that was all about the changing face of work, right? And how we work differently. And I think the whole corporate work system is broken. But tell me a little bit more about your stance on work and how work is changing, because I find that really fascinating. And I know you've done a lot of thinking and a lot of writing about that topic.
Yeah. And I don't pretend to be an expert on it, but it's definitely something that I'm really passionate about and interested in. And yeah, I don't think, up until relatively recently, many of us had a really internalized sense of options beyond, okay, I go to college, I get these kinds of jobs, I work for these kinds of companies, I work my way up the ladder, I work 9 to 5 until I'm 65, and then I retire, right? This kind of model. But so many people are miserable in that model. And so, for me, it started in this very personal space of, I want to do both of these things in a way that isn't in constant competition. I want to be really present for my kids in the way that my mom was present for me. And I want a career that really challenges me and stretches me, and that I feel like I'm contributing in kind of a different way. And I don't want these things to be constantly at war in my mind. Will there be trade-offs and tensions? Of course, but I didn't want them to always feel like I'm failing in one to succeed in the other. And that's the only way to go about this. Right. And so, I wanted to know that there was something else out there. And so it's been so incredible to see, people build lives that work for them. People build careers around what works for them and their bodies as they deal with chronic illness, or as they're taking care of their parents, or as they're raising children, or these other things that matter so much in our lives. And that work doesn't have to be this all-consuming thing for so much of our lives. It can be something that complements and strengthens these other areas of our lives rather than competing with them. And entrepreneurship gives us that. And I remember going to a talk, and it was all about policy changes and how policies can change to better support families, because America's not known for being the best at that. And it bummed me out in some ways, because it was talking about, okay, how can we do these things to nudge employers towards these different areas, which is good and important. But there was no conversation at all about how can we support entrepreneurship as a tool for supporting these people and is for giving them more options. And I'd love to see more and more of that. And I think more and more people are demanding that, are quitting their jobs and starting out as freelancers, because they recognize that they want to have that kind of control over how their life works and how work fits into that life.
I think it's even more than that too. Like, I've always had this opinion that entrepreneurship is actually going to save us, because the implications of being able to have flexibility in your, it's not just about the flexibility. Like, yes, absolutely, we get to spend more time with our families, and we get to, be closer to our children, and we get to do all those things, which is, kind of the obvious. But then there's a huge, there are two huge important pieces that I think we don't think about enough. And I'd love to hear your opinion on these. One, that when we have ownership over our work, it tends to be more innovative. It tends to be, that's where we find all the creative ideas, right? And it's more satisfying, and we put more into it, and we are able to go in directions that we couldn't have for a long time, right? And then the other part of that is that all of a sudden now we get access to services that we couldn't access through large organizations, which is not because they're bad or evil, but because it doesn't economically make sense for them to provide them.
Right.
So the quality of the service we can get from sole service providers, and the people who are being able to innovate and who can offer services that are ideal for how consumers want to consume them, as opposed to what makes sense at scale, right? So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts and comments on that.
I couldn't agree more. I love that point of, also seeing the side of this actually better contributes to us being able to grow and develop and express our gifts in a deeper way than a lot of jobs have space for, or the ability to flex for. And like you said, there are so many things where we have all these people being able to lean into that to grow to their, absolute maximum potential in a lot of ways. And that helps everyone who's buying from them and the people that they're buying from. And it creates a better market in so many ways.
So tell me about the team now. So you are hiring people, you have this vision to create an agency. So where did that decision kind of come from? I'm going to move from being just Ashlee providing services to now I'm going to scale up to have a team around me.
I hired my first assistant just a few months in. I kind of knew that was a skill set I needed to develop, to learn how to be a leader and to have support in my business. But I really didn't have to dig into that deep until I got pregnant and realized that if I needed to disappear for 6 weeks or 2 months or 3 months with this baby, if it was just me, my clients wouldn't be served at all while I was gone. So I realized that I needed to learn how to bring in people who could serve my clients directly, and then work towards eventually getting to a place where they could do that independently long-term, even where I could run the business and they could do that client support direct work. So that was about 1.5 years in, I think, after starting my business, that I hired my first client-facing team, and the learning curve was very steep. And it continues to be something I'm learning a lot about, but has been just so meaningful in a lot of different areas that I didn't expect, where it wasn't just like, oh, now I have people who can keep the business running while I'm gone, but also, I'm learning how to lead. I'm learning how to articulate our vision for someone else. And I'm learning how to make something that can grow beyond me or even outlast me.
So you're facing the same challenges that your customers would face in growing a team. And so how has that allowed you to better serve them?
Yeah, I can definitely empathize with all of their concerns, frustrations, questions, bad habits, all of that. It's like, yep, I get that. I'm right there with you. And I kind of can also find the things that work for me and then pass those things on to say, hey, what if you tried this? Like this could help. But yeah, a lot of it, I definitely don't pretend to be an expert on building big agency teams because that's something I'm still learning, but I can definitely help people with that first hire to say, all right, let's work on that mindset that your own time is free and that hiring someone else actually means paying money that you weren't otherwise paying, right? Let's work on letting go in some of these initial areas. Let's work on articulating a process for how you do what you do so that someone else can support you in that. And then on the VA side, talking with them about what it means to be a professional and to support their clients. Because I think there can be a little bit of a misunderstanding in the market right now that being a VA is easy and anyone can do it, which causes problems on both sides. And so we can now talk to both sides of that equation to say, let's set you guys up for success. Let's make sure you both have what you need to work together well here.
Awesome. So I imagine, and I know that part of the work that you are going to have to do is helping your clients make that transition from a mindset perspective. You mentioned this already. So are they engaging with you initially, or do they get kind of assigned a team member? And how are you? I know you've got some experience in doing that mindset work and helping them through. When that occurs, when you know you've got a client that's kind of struggling in that way, how are you dealing with that inside the agency?
It's a great question. So right now I have a team member who partners with me within our group, our kind of group container. So we both tag team a lot of that, and she manages all of our VA recruiting work. So she does a lot of that communication around those pieces of things. So they tend to work with both of us right now. I'm due with our second child in December. So I'm needing to go through this whole process again of now getting ready to cut my hours in half again and be gone for several months at the beginning of the year. And so it's kind of doing the next iteration of that. Right. And so she's stepping into that role of leading the group program while I'm out, and then I'll come back and we'll tag team again. But I'm blanking on the second half of that question. So one was the team member piece. And then the other is how they're getting that support for the mindset shift. Is that right? So yeah, a lot of that is individual conversations right now, even in that group container, to kind of give them space to bring up those real honest concerns and not feel ashamed or embarrassed, or maybe that they're the only person who worries about these things or is hung up on these things, right? To say, hey, I just feel like no one can do these things as well as me. And hey, how am I supposed to let this go? And what if they let me down? And, all of those things, to just talk it through with them and acknowledge that none of this is without risk, that those things can happen, but helping them see that bigger long-term picture too of none of this is wasted, right? Even if you find a great VA and they leave after 6 months, your business is stronger, your ability to delegate is stronger, your understanding of what you need to delegate to another person is stronger. None of that is wasted and can strengthen that next relationship. So just really kind of talking that through and coming back to it. Because let's be real, none of us hear something that's like, you're right, I will immediately lay down that old belief and never come back to it, right? We kind of work through this over time.
What? Really? So I'm interested. I'm curious about this group program model, right? Because oftentimes when business owners are looking for operational help, it's because they want someone to do it for them. So tell me a little bit more about how that group program developed and why it works.
Yeah, it's been a big shift for us too, because we were one-on-one for many, many years. And a couple of the things that I realized were, we were very expensive for these small businesses. It was putting a lot of financial pressure on them. It was worth it to them. They were happy and all of those things, but we were trying to find ways to bring the price down so that it could be more sustainable, especially for businesses in this stage and businesses considering bringing on their first team member, right? Which is another layer of investment. So that was one piece of it. And another was realizing that, over working with 60 plus businesses, we were seeing these phases that people were going through, and that those needs at those different phases were consistent from one person to the next. And so we wanted to create a container where people were getting some of that traditional, that consistent support in a group context, but also still had a lot of one-on-one access to us, because this isn't a space that tends well towards just being in a course, right? It's so personal, it's so directly implemented into a business, right? That we really wanted to be able to come alongside people in a still a very one-on-one way. And so we have it set up where we have biweekly trainings where it's like, hey, let's talk as a group about inbox management or client onboarding or planning or those sorts of things. But then let's have a couple office hours a week where you can come in and talk with us one-on-one and have one-on-one calls with us every other month. So we still always have that direct tie to what they're working on, where they're feeling stuck, what they're working through, because they're all at different phases. So we wanted to create a space where in a lot of ways they're getting more direct access to us than they did in a one-on-one program, but we can deliver it a little less expensively that way.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so here's a big issue that I've seen a lot of business owners struggle with when they're hiring help. It's this relinquishing control.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I know you got something to say about that. So this gets in the way of a lot of business owners scaling and being able to see that kind of vision, right? Is the relinquishing control changing their, not their standards, but changing their understanding of how the operations of their business should look.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get past that?
Yeah, this is something I have studied in depth for myself, because it's been by far the hardest part for me. And I think for any entrepreneur, because this is our baby. We've literally built this from nothing. And so it is not a small feat to hand off a piece of that to another person who will do things differently than we do, right? And I think one of the biggest things for me, kind of as I was mentioning earlier, was recognizing the power of learning to lead, not just within the team, but also carrying that into the rest of my life and into my relationships with my clients and my ability to serve them. And so I started to kind of reframe all that discomfort into a bigger container, not just I'm figuring out how to work with this one person in this one role, and that will help me in this specific way. But this is actually changing who I am as a person. And that will help me for many, many years, no matter what happens in this individual relationship, which helped when I had to let people go or the role had to shift because I didn't quite design it the way I needed to, or those sorts of things. And then the other piece that someone taught me was the importance of recognizing and setting fair expectations that someone will make mistakes. That is literally inevitable, because I kind of thought that if I got everything perfect, all my processes are right, I communicate all my expectations in a really clear way, all the accountability's there, all the support's there, everything's there, that we will avoid all problems. That was honestly what I was kind of thinking, hoping for, and needing to lay down that expectation and say, I make mistakes constantly. My team will also make mistakes. How do we then learn how to make those things right? What does it look like for them to still remain empowered to then answer those mistakes and make it a different choice next time and grow in their role, just as I'm growing in mine off of my mistakes. So I think I had to change my expectations on both of those sides, both creating space for inevitable mistakes to happen and also recognizing that this was a bigger deal in some ways than just bringing on a person to help with a specific.
And in my mind, it's less of a like a black and white thing where it's like, oh, a mistake was made and now we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
We have, I don't even know that I see them as mistakes. I see them as like a breakdown in some type of expectation or communication, and we just have this ongoing cycle of them. And so when we set the expectation that everything's going to get to a certain point and nothing will be wrong, that's when we start to see business owners getting super frustrated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Super frustrated because they feel like there's always something, right? And
Right.
if you have the intention of looking and finding all the places that there might be holes, you'll find them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'll always find them. And so if you if we can change our expectation that you're always, you're always going to be circling around, and you make this little bit better, and then you make this little bit better, and you do a little bit more over here. And then you find that this one's over here is, now lagging. And so then we have to bolster this one. And there's just like this
Mhm.
ongoing, it's an ongoing process. So the expectation shift, I think, is the important part. Not that we don't
Mhm.
want to have high standards in the quality of the work that we do, and we don't want to always strive for the best that we can be, but letting yourself believe that this is all not working and we're going to burn it down because you are always fixing things
Mhm.
is, just the path to destruction.
Yeah. And I know we talked about that and I shared your story in the book for this reason, because I loved your approach to that of saying, hey, I think you use the analogy of like a Frankenbiz, right? Like we're bringing together pieces from all these different things and we're just in that, right? And now we're maturing it and we're making it stronger, we're making it better. And that's an endless process of iteration. And I love that analogy because for me, as a natural perfectionist who is able to, in some ways, allow that belief system to stay put when I was in the corporate world, because I could just do everything just right and get my promotions and get my check marks and my gold stars and all of those things. As an entrepreneur, I realized I had to lay that down
Mm,
because we never leave behind the messy middle. We never reach perfection in the sense of something that cannot be changed or improved. It's constantly spiraling upwards and we're returning to things and strengthening them and making them better.
yeah, always,
Um, and
always.
that can be a good thing. Yeah.
But I think a lot of people are uncomfortable in that, though. Like, I think that
Mhm.
they want to believe that you get somewhere and you stay somewhere and then it's all fixed and pretty, and that just doesn't. I mean, if you want to, sure. If you don't want to grow, but when we can get comfortable with the fluidity, and I think that's a really big thing, is getting comfortable with the fluidity of entrepreneurship and of owning your own
Mhm.
business, that you're never reaching, like, everybody wants to reach this. We've been conditioned that way. We reach milestones. Every business school, every business course, every teaching, you're going to reach this milestone.
Mhm.
You never do, right? You never do.
There's always another one.
Nothing's ever done, right?
Mhm.
And I think that
Mhm.
releases you from this expectation. And the other part of this too is that I think business owners struggle with is that they have learned to feel valuable by doing things.
Yes.
And when they have to
Mhm.
step back and stop doing things and making decisions instead, can you comment on that?
Yeah. I know that you've seen this probably with a lot of your clients, and I've experienced it myself, that there's almost an identity shift that has to happen in how you see yourself and how you see the value you're providing to your clients and to your team. I was actually talking to someone the other day where he said, I had to recognize that the value I was bringing to the business was no longer this direct service to the client. My value was now empowering and strengthening the team, and they were providing that value to the client. So I had to completely recalibrate my understanding. And that really resonated with me because so much of this stuff goes really deep, right? Our understanding of what success looks like, what our worth looks like, what productivity looks like, what that finish line means and is, all of those things. And it gets into some really personal territory of, okay, why is it so uncomfortable for me to not be needed in this moment? What is that? And can I be comfortable with that someone can be perfectly fine, get everything that they need, and never talk to me, and we have a couple clients like that. They work with Jen, they don't work with me. And it was weird at first. It's like, oh, I've got to be able to jump in here somewhere. I realized, nah, they didn't need me. And learning to be okay with that at a personal level so that I didn't end up jumping back in with some excuse that I was needed when really I wasn't.
Right. And I'm sure for you and for others, part of that is letting go of the perfectionism and the, like, if
Mhm.
I don't do it, it's not right. But
Mhm.
also letting go of that value that we associate with doing things, right? With the tactical execution.
Mhm.
And it's hard. It's hard to sit back and watch your business be run without you, especially when you get anxious and you get anxious about whatever, and then you
Mhm.
want to dive in and just start doing stuff. right?
Mhm.
And I'm sure that's a real roadblock for your clients and the work that you guys do too.
Yeah, because it becomes less tangible. And yeah, there's just a lot of major identity level changes that come with that. Because there is some sense of satisfaction that comes from, here's the goal, I've done it, I've delivered it, you're happy, everyone's happy, we're all good. And having to be willing to, in some ways, lay that down, that feeling, and experience value in a different way that looks less like doing the individual tasks and more like
Yeah.
inspiring and leading another person.
Yeah. And believing that there's value there, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So what are you selling your clients?
What am I selling them? That is a fun way to phrase that question. So for us, it really is, we are selling you the support you need to take back the freedom that you wanted when you started this business, and really focusing on systems and delegation as the two key tools to do that. So it really, people will come in and say, okay, I need a process. I think I'm just overwhelmed. It's like, yes, you do. But let's look at this bigger picture and say, all right, well, what's that process going to do for you? And let's get you that, however that looks. And for most people, it's freedom.
Yeah. And I'm asking you that question because I think a lot of people come with like a tactical expectation, and what they actually need is a mindset reframe or a strategy reframe, right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure you especially see that as a strategist at the big picture too, because that foundation has to be. So even though I'm on the implementation side of things, it still is coming back to that foundational stuff a lot of the time.
Totally. And so is that something that you're providing to your clients?
Yeah. Yeah. So it really is, if someone comes and they say, okay, I'm ready, I want a virtual assistant, let's go. Like, we'll absolutely help them do that. But along the way, it's okay. If you want this to be successful, let's talk about these other things. Like, are you going to be able to delegate to this person? Do you have fair expectations of what this role is going to be? Do you have the pieces in place in the way you're thinking about it, in the way you're approaching this, in the way you're communicating that will allow someone to help you? Right. So, because I think sometimes we think, especially in the VA space, like, oh, I'll just hire a VA and they'll be able to just read my mind and fix all of this for me. And that doesn't tend to work that way. So
Yeah,
we have to reset that expectation a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely a warm-up process that has to be expected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's shift the conversation just a little bit. What is next for you? So you have piled a whole bunch of success into a short years. And you've written your book and you have built this agency and you're being very intentional about your growth. What's next for you? Obviously having a baby, which I didn't even know about. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Where are you going with the business?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting few months, because I definitely have gone through a couple of these iterations already, like we're talking about, in terms of starting my business solo, 100% full time, plus having a first child, dropping my hours to 30, bringing in people who are taking care of my clients, sometimes without my intervention. And now this new phase, which is kind of the next level of that, which is dropping my hours to 15 for at least the next 2 years. And what does that mean?
Mhm.
And it's going to be a stretch for me. I spend about 15 hours a week on calls right now. And so it's not going to be an easy shift to just chop that all in half and move on. Right. And so we're going to have to recalibrate the roles in our business, who's doing what pieces of things, where am I required, where am I optional, to a kind of a whole new degree. So we're kind of walking the talk with this stuff, trying to figure out exactly what that looks like and how to make that happen so that my business can keep thriving with a whole lot less of me in it.
Yeah, I love it. And knowing you're going to make that happen. But
Thanks.
tell me a little bit more about what you're doing to leverage the book and the work that you did around the book.
Yeah, that's been an interesting experience too, because there are a million different directions you can go with a book. And so a lot of the balancing act for me has been taking pieces one at a time and giving myself space for that, because I would have loved to do, a 5-pronged book launch where I'm doing podcasts and guest interviews and incorporating all those ideas into live products and doing all these different things and speaking. And there was a lot of ands in there. And so I made the strategic choice to take them one at a time. So over the summer, I got published in a couple of places talking about some of the big ideas in the book. This round, I'm doing a live 8-week workshop for people who want to turn an idea into reality over the course of a couple of months together. So we're really taking the field guide aspect of the book and implementing that live together. So we're starting that next week. And so we're kind of taking them one at a time, which has been really helpful for me mentally, because I think especially with a book, there are just so many things you can do with them. And I have to remember that it's a long game. I can be still doing some of these things 5 years from now, talking about these things, recognizing that it's really just the start of a conversation. But it has been a process for me to calibrate that down to the capacity that I have at this season in my life. So next year will be even more of that.
Well, you've got assets, right? And,
Mm-hmm.
and I was reading an interesting article last night about this long form content and just how much we can leverage it
Mm-hmm.
without having to create something new, right?
Right.
And it sounds to me like what you created was an investment in
Mm-hmm.
that's going to enable you to continue your visibility and your marketing for quite a long time.
That's the goal. Yeah. I
Awesome.
don't need to become the next Mike Michalowicz, a book every year or two. It's really, all right, I've done this. I've really articulated this. How can I keep deepening that conversation with people? What does that look like? So it's a lot of kind of trying things and learning to become more visible. It's a very vulnerable experience.
Yeah. And you're an
Publishing a
introvert,
book.
so I'm
I
sure
am.
that was like that was a little extra.
Like, oh, people are actually reading this? How do I feel about that?
Well, it was great. Okay, I've got a big question that I ask everybody, and I'm sure you have some opinions on this. What's the difference between what we sort of see out there in the world and the internet marketing world and the online business world and what's real?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I love that question. One of the things that I've really started speaking out more about, because I realized how much it's affected me and a lot of the people that I work with, is as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency when we tell our story to tell it using the narrative frame of problem, eureka moment, result, right? It's this, hey, I was in my garage and I was struggling for 4 years and I made every mistake in the book. And then I X, whatever that is. In the shower one day, I discovered that this was the business model I needed, or I joined this program, right? Because many testimonials follow this format until X and then Y. And this is a very popular narrative frame in movies and all of those things as well. And so an example is the song "I'll Make a Man Out of You" in Mulan, right? Where at the beginning of this song, she's, infiltrated the ranks, pretending to be a man. She's struggling. She's about to be sent home. And then X, right? She climbs the pole. She gets this arrow from the top. She does this physical feat that no one else could do. And then the next frame, she's beating everyone. She's earned the respect of everyone. She's everyone's favorite. Everything's great. And we tend to skip everything that happens between that eureka moment and the eureka results, because it's a lot easier to tell it this way. And that screws people over bad, because then we expect entrepreneurship to work that way. So bam, mind-blowing moment. I was talking to my coach, everything's going to be amazing. And then you go out there and you land in real life where there's this whole middle marathon between the eureka moment and the eureka result. And it's easy to think, my idea failed. I'm a failure. None of this is working like it's supposed to, because we expected eureka moment, eureka result, right? And so I wrote an article recently really pushing on this and saying we need to start telling our stories differently, because this is creating a false expectation that's hurting us. We need to talk about this iteration, like you're talking about, that we can have a great idea. It can be an amazing idea and go through 5 iterations over 3 years before you really see that come to fruition. Or, there's just going to be stuff in between, and be prepared for that. Be prepared for the dip. Be prepared for the temptations of other ideas. Be prepared for this. And it's normal. And it doesn't mean you're a failure. Because when we tell the truth, then people are better equipped and not surprised by that. I got on a soapbox a little bit there. Sorry.
That's okay. I mean, you had my heart going where I was like, yes, 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 yes. How many times have I said to my clients, just take a breath, just let this take flight. Like, you don't know. And we, they'll go in, they'll design a program and they'll go in and they'll launch it. And then, inevitably, unless they've done a whole lot of work already in building an audience and a community and that sort of thing, inevitably they're going to be underwhelmed by their results the first time.
Right.
Great.
Right.
Fine. Right. Because this was your first try, and now we're going to do it again. And now we're going to do it again. And then inevitably, like the third, the fourth time they launch, they end up starting to get some traction, and they're in their groove and they understand, and they've run this program now, and they get it, and things start to gel. And I can always predict it, because we're waiting for that eureka moment, that eureka result, just exactly like what you've spoken about. And it's damaging, right? It's damaging. And so there's so much anxiety, and like, entrepreneurs can't just relax, right? They can't just continue to commit. This is why I'm so intentional on people getting their strategy right first and making sure that it's aligned with who they are. And then when that's right, then we're just talking execution. Then we're going to execute, and we're going to sort of shift and meander and watch and learn and keep building and keep building and keep building. But if you don't keep building, and you just write it all off because it was a disappointing experience, that's where you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you can hold that. Yeah, you can hold that lighthouse steady.
Yeah.
While you're pivoting and experimenting and iterating.
Yeah, totally.
In the day to day.
That's where we really have to control the anxiety, and really have to control the temptation to just keep changing, right?
Yeah. Like, maybe if I have a better idea, it'll just click into place, right?
Or like, if I do something, if I do something else, then I'm going to fix this problem. Yeah. Yep. Ashlee, I always love talking to you. We're coming up on the hour. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah. A great starting spot is asquaredonline.com. That's my website, all spelled out. And from there, it's an easy launch pad to the book and all the places that you can find me. I hang out on social media, and I'm pretty lucky in some ways that I'm the only Ashlee Berghoff with my name spelled in all these funky ways, with 2 E's instead of a Y and all of that. So if you Google me, you'll find me pretty easily.
Awesome. Good. Awesome. Okay. And go and check out Ashlee. Go and check out her book. Her book's awesome. I love what she's doing. I can attest that this is one of the most talented operations people I have ever worked with. And it, obviously, what you bring to the table is so much more, and the thought you've put into how people work and how people need to work and how they need to work with other people. I think that's so rich and so valuable. And so go check out Ashlee, go see what she's up to, grab her book, and just watch her, because I know what's going to happen. She's going to grow. She's going to do the next thing, and it's going to be amazing. And she's going to have a baby. All right. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It was obviously so great. And I really, look forward to seeing you continue to grow. And that's a wrap for this episode. It was such a great conversation. Make sure you go check out Ashlee. And finally, I'd love for you to join us for our next episode, where we're going to be speaking to my long-term client and friend, Kimberly Carroll, who is a coach for change makers, to help them take their life to the next level and make them unstoppable. Thank you again for being here. If you've enjoyed today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on. This helps us share our stories with an even bigger audience. Till next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being